So, I just wanted to start this morning. We're still continuing our series on how to be like Jesus or being like Jesus, which is obviously the motive we're all gunning for. And we're going to talk today about being successful. So being successful is everywhere, isn't it? You need to be the best parent, otherwise you'll look incompetent. You need to get the best grades at school, otherwise people are going to think you're stupid and you will fail at life. You need to achieve all your goals by a certain age. You need to be the best at work, otherwise people will think you're worthless and overlook you. If you don't work well, then you need to prove to others you're busy 24/7, otherwise they will judge you, because where else does your worth come from? Therefore, you need to make sure you're busy, you're hitting your targets for your bosses, by your lecturers telling you the best, or how many people text and call you. Your peers and community think you're amazing. You know the classic, oh, John and Jean, they're amazing, aren't they? They do everything, they're just wonderful. You need to be constantly proving to yourself and to everyone in your life, you have it together, you have money, you have a great house, car, you have status, people want to be you, you bring results. You basically need to be Michelle Obama. Clever, gifted, powerful, rich, and influential. That is what the world sees as successful. However, I have some news. That is definitely not what God defines as successful. God evaluates success by our faithfulness to what he has called us to and our character, not by result. I'm going to say that again because I think it's so important. God evaluates success by our faithfulness to what he has called us to do and our character, not by result. And he says this very clearly all the way through his life. In Matthew, I didn't actually do the reading. I was just very behind today, and I'm really sorry about that. So there should normally be a verse and someone doing it before, but unfortunately you're going to hear me again. But basically, a bit of context before what I'm about to talk about. Jesus just been chatting to this rich man saying, hi, how can I get into the kingdom of heaven? Jesus basically saying, like, not really, mate, if you keep all your wealth. He's freaking out a bit. But anyway, Jesus then tells this story to explain what will happen to those who are faithful. So this is Matthew 20 from 1 to 16. Mum, get your book out. Have you got your Bible? She always needs about 5 seconds. She's always like, oh, they go so fast, don't they? And then she can't get her Bible verse out, so we're going to give her a little second for you to get your Bible, Mum. This is for you. Just joking, she's literally going to kill me when I get home. Okay, so for the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner, who went out early in the morning to hire workers for his vineyard. He agreed to pay them in a denarius for the day and sent them into his vineyard. Basically, a pound is a denarius, if you want to know that. About 9 in the morning, he went out and saw others standing in the marketplace doing nothing. He told them, you also go and work in my vineyard, and I will pay you whatever is right. So they went. He went out again about noon and about 3 in the afternoon and did the same thing. About 5 in the afternoon, he went out and found others still standing around. He asked them, why have you been standing here all day long doing nothing? Because no one has hired us, they answered. He said to them, you also go and work in my vineyard. When evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to his foreman, call the workers and pay them their wages, beginning with the first ones hired and going on to the last ones. Yeah. Thank you, Charlie, he's got it down there. The workers who were hired about 5 in the afternoon came and each received £1. So when they came who were hired first, they expected to receive more, but each one of them also received £1. And when they received it, they began to grumble against the landowner. These who were hired last only 1 hour, they said, and you have made them equal to us who've been borne the burden of the work and the heat of the day. But he answered to them, I am not being unfair to you, friend. Didn't you agree to work for £1? Take your pay and go. I want to give the one who was hired the last the same as I gave you. Don't I have the right to do what I want with my own money, or are you envious because I am generous? So the last will be first, and the first will be last. God evaluates success by our faithfulness to what he has called us to do and our character, not by result. Even if we just take the last line of that verse, the last will be first and the first will be last. If you let that sink in, it doesn't matter if you don't know Jesus, you're on a journey with Jesus, you've known Jesus your whole life. That still is having the same impact on each and every one of you because it's just as challenging. How many times do we treat those who are last in our society first? And I don't mean in the pity sense. If you had, for example, a man who was a bit depressed, didn't really work, struggled to keep his job down, and then you had Michelle Obama in front of you. You can see a trend. Love Michelle Obama. And you had an amazing gift. Who would you give it to? If you were tactical, you'd give it to Michelle Obama because she might give you a gift in return, and she might, you might become a bit chummy with her. But this is just not how God works. He gives gifts and does not expect anything in return. He gives to people freely, regardless of their status. He is a good, kind God who looks at us as we are and looks at us all equally. Man looks on the outside, but God looks on the heart. We see that in the way he treats all the workers as equal. Their wage is not dependent on the result which they bring. God evaluates success by our faithfulness to what he has called us to do and our character, not by result. So you may be saying, okay, that's great, Becky, but I don't know what God's called me to do. That's nice. And whether you're Christian or not Christian, God has the same message for both of you, which is he is calling you to spend time with him. And that's in our prayer life, in our worship life, in Bible reading time. And again, you might be like, oh, Becky, reading the Bible is so boring. And I shouldn't say this, but sometimes I agree. My dad's now not going to speak to me. Just creating enemies doing this. But it's true, isn't it? Sometimes I struggle to read the Bible. I struggle to find time in the day to worship God, to pray, do all these holy things. I know Ben probably reads the Bible every morning, so does my dad. Hanel, do you do that? I don't want to at you, but yeah, you do. Wow. See, look at this kind of devotion. I mean, they're extremely holy, and I commend them, and I want to do that one day. But I'd love to be holy enough, and I'm really down for that. But I know that I do it in a different way, and it doesn't always mean that it's the right one, but it's me making space for my week time with God. Because when I don't, my behavior and my soul shifts. So what I do at the moment in the pandemic life is have a bath on about a Thursday, and I listen to this one podcast, and it's a Bible verse, and then it has a bit of commentary about it afterwards. And then on a Monday, I go to the amazing, shout out to Sarah's Zoom dance thing on a Monday, which is brilliant. If you've never been, you should go. You don't have to turn your camera on. You don't have to dance. In fact, I actually proved that on this Monday, and she knows the story, so she's probably hopefully fine with me saying this. But I was exhausted on Monday night. I'd been working to the bone, and I honestly couldn't bring myself to do anything. I had a Chinese on the way, and I was just like, oh gosh, life. Do you know what I mean? It's pandemic life, I'm sure. Lots of you feel that way. And I was just like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to make it. I really want to go, but otherwise I'm just not going to eat. And if I'm not going to eat, then I'm going to be hangry, and there's no point of doing it because the whole time I'll just be sitting there thinking about food. And anyway, I decided, no, I'm going to go. I'm going to turn my camera off, and I'm going to eat my Chinese whilst everyone else is dancing with their cameras on and praying beautiful prayers. And I'm just going to join in, and I'm going to do it where I am. I went to the Zoom with my Chinese because I needed to be around people worshipping God. I need that rhythm in my life where I bring myself back to him, where I put time aside to meet him. And it doesn't always mean I do meet him, but it means I'm open to hearing what he is calling me to do. Oh, sorry. When we listen and read his word and the stories of Jesus, we become transformed because they are so challenging and powerful. For example, in my workplace, as some of you know, I don't work at the church anymore, but I work for a tech company, and it's very, very competitive, and there's a huge sense that we need to compete against our colleagues. And from day one, I've always stuck to my guns and never allowed my manager nor anybody else compare to do the work I do with others, because I've always known that my value and my worth comes from God, that when I am working, I'm working because I want to work for God, not because I want to please someone or do something to beat someone else. The narrative at my work is not to be the best, but to work the best for God. And so it means this kind of behavior has been infectious in our team. It means that actually all of my colleagues and I actually have all unanimously agreed that we don't want to compete against each other. Because competition, let's just be honest, it just breeds jealousy. It just makes you feel crap, doesn't it? Like if I was on a little podium and you had like Ben and Hanel at like 10 and like 15, and then you had me at 5, and every single Sunday you'd bring up those figures, I would just feel crap. And then vice versa, if I was just always scoring really highly and Ben and Hanel were at the bottom, what would happen is that they'd start feeling a bit of jealousy. I mean, I wouldn't say that you would do that, but do you know what I mean? And so we have the power in our workplaces and schools and community to bring God's goodness there. So as we live our lives, whether you stay at home, you're at work or at school, at university, Jesus does not judge like the world does. About how many people liked your photos, about how many people wanted to wear your clothes, have your job, have your relationships, how much money you had. When I get to the pearly gates, Michelle Obama and I will be on the same level when we get to heaven. We will become before our God. He will look at us as the same. We both had tasks to complete in our times, both important tasks. Our lives will be reduced to our faithfulness to his task, his good and serving tasks. Not the task that I want, which is, to be honest, have the best career, have an Instagram family life, and be the perfect person that everyone else wants to be. God won't care. Not in a mean way, but God won't care. What God will care about, is your character. Have you held stuff back for yourself so you can get ahead? Have you been dismissive of people because you thought yourself better than others? Have you lived a life just trying to impress everybody else or prove your worth, that you are successful? Because God is not impressed. He is no respecter of man's laws. I'm going to leave today on a story because it's one of my favorite stories that my sister told me. But I've been reading this book about the Weinstein Scandal, if you don't know it. It's a pretty explosive story that happened a couple of years back. And it's about the reporters in the New York Times who are trying to encourage people who've been victims of assault to come forward and to come onto the record. And at the time, during the book, they explain how they had so many different people on the record. They had a couple of secretaries, I think, and a couple of people who worked for him, but none of the celebrities wanted to come onto the record. And they kept asking, and they asked this woman called Judd, who's a famous American actress. And she says, "Give me a minute." And so they leave her. And she goes on a prayer walk with God, and she decides that God has spoken to her and asked her to go on the record. And she does go on the record, and as a result, this started the Me Too movement. Ashley was faithful. She risked everything, her career, her reputation, because she felt God calling. Her character was in line with God's. And if you know God, you know that's just so him. Because he often calls us onto the water and asks us to trust him, and then he does his wonders. God has no boundaries. He has his hands everywhere. He knows all the most important people in the world and knows their heart. And he uses us as individuals to protect his people, and in this case, the victims who've been abused all over the world. And I'm not saying this is easy. The Bible shows us that following Jesus is hard and definitely not glamorous. If you have a moment, read the story of Jonah, and you'll see that. Poor boy. However, it is the most freeing narrative I have heard, because God will use us when we open ourselves to him. When we start following Jesus, we no longer have to care what the world sees us as, or through the world's lens of success, this narrow, self-serving version of success. On the contrary, like Ashley, when we become Christians, we put our reputations on the line and our success on the line to achieve God's goodness in the world, which I think is the epitome of success. We start to not put ourselves at the center of everything. We start to look outwards. We become the hands and we become the feet of God when we read stories of Jesus, because it challenges us and transforms us, not to just be a good person, because a self-help book could probably get you there, kind of, to some extent, but by having a relationship with God, praying and reading his stories and allowing him to transform you, and through his Spirit, transform those around you, because his love is contagious, good, and pure. So I'm going to leave you with this freeing and challenging and hopeful message today. God evaluates success by our faithfulness to what he has called us to and our character, not by result. So I'm just going to take a moment now And I want you all to, wherever you are, to put your hands out. If you don't like putting your hands out, that's fine. Do whatever makes you comfortable. If you're not a Christian, it's a bit like meditation, but not, because we're going to meet God. So I just want you to close your eyes and open them up and just say, God,